Acknowledge. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded Aboriginal territories of the Coast Salish people, and in particular the Wasanic and Secwagin, on whose territory we live in today. My name is Joanne Fox, and I am the chair of the Fairfield Ave Community Association, Land Use Association, sorry, Land Use Committee, and chair of tonight's meeting. We have two other members of the Land Use Committee here physically, Owen Seifert and Julie Edney, and Ashley Fernandez and Dawn Monsoor are joining us virtually. We do have quite a busy evening. We're going to start off with a presentation on a temporary use permit for a building down in Cook Street Village. And this is not something that is 100% absolutely necessary by the applicants. It's just something that they asked if they could do because they would like to get community input. So that'll be a brief discussion, a presentation and discussion. And then we do have two community meetings tonight, one for 1160 Oxford and one for, oh, I can't remember the address now, it's Kipling and between Fairfield and Thurlow. So those meetings will be, so the first meeting will be a short presentation and followed by questions and answers. And the second two meetings will be, each applicant has 15 minutes to present, and then we will open it up to questions and answers. The role of the Community Association Land Use Committee is to facilitate dialogue between the community and applicants who wish to we're applying for development, sorry, and results in changes in the neighborhood. We, as the CALUC, do not make decisions or really make recommendations. We help guide the applicants through the process, which can be quite long and multi-dimensional. But we do try to make their lives easier as well. And we do encourage the community to give us feedback either at these meetings or through emails or also through direct emails with the Victoria City Council. So we are registering people here, although there's nobody here other than us chickens, no, other than us who are presenting. Last month we had a few people, and then we will record your names as well. We do wish this to be a respectful meeting, and that everybody has an opportunity to be heard. When it does come around for the question and answers, you'll be allowed to have one question or comment up to 2 minutes, and then if it's a question, the person can answer you, and then we will go on to the next person. What we try to do is have people just maybe put in the chat box if you're interested in asking a question. If you start putting your hands up, it's sort of hard to see what order people were in, but we can read the names down in the chat. This meeting is being recorded, as you know, so the recording will be available on the website afterwards. It is also being there will also be a report written after this meeting and sent to the city council, and that will also be made available on the FGCA website. There's no decision by the CALUC to support or oppose any application being made today, and we do have other ways to stay involved with the process after this meeting. You can attend the committee of the whole, as you can't ask any questions when you're there, but you're invited to attend and see what the presentation is. You can attend other advisory committees like the advisory design panel. Again, you can't make a presentation, but you can hear what's going on. And then the final sort of opportunity is a public hearing, and that's when the city council actually makes a decision whether to go ahead with the application or not. And that is another place that you can actually put your name down and be heard, and that's usually months away. And probably one of the best ways to stay on top of any application in the city is to visit the development tracker on the City of Victoria's website, and any changes, revisions that are made to any development in the community that has actually gone into, past this this part of the process, and then is working towards getting the final approval. That is all in the development tracker, and so you can just go to the City of Victoria website, type in development tracker, it'll take you right there. You put in the address of the application for development, and you will find lots of information, plans, revisions, letters to the city, etc. And it also will have the name of the applicant, the email of the applicant, the phone number of the applicant, and you can contact them and with any questions you may have as well. So I think that's as much as I'm going to say right now. I will ask that Karen Joel would make her presentation, and we're trying out a new mic system here in the live body room, so we hope it works fine. If at any time you can't hear or have problems hearing, just put up your hand and we'll go on pause. But yeah.
Do you want me to come there?
Yeah, especially if she goes up to the computer.
Oh, yeah, it's on my phone.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm just going to pop my presentation up. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Karen Joll, and I'm here on behalf of Joll Properties to provide you with an overview of our temporary use permit application for the property located at 320 Cook Street. It's a site that we recently acquired and is currently home to Starbucks, the Village Taverna, and a podiatrist office on the ground floor. The second floor of the building is fit out as office space, but currently sits vacant due to a zoning issue, which is why we are proposing this temporary use permit that we're here to share with you guys tonight. So we're not proposing any physical changes to the building's exterior or any deviations from the historic pattern of use of the building, but our application is to permit the building to be re-tenanted on the second floor in keeping with how it's been used since it was constructed in 1980. So our understanding is that the second floor was built out as office space. It was not conforming to zoning at the time the building was built, and that was because it was built for WorkSafe BC. And being a provincial government entity, they were not required to comply with zoning. Further, that initial exemption would continue as long as the space did not sit vacant for more than 6 months. Subsequent to WorkSafe BC, the space was occupied by a number of private sector tenants, the most recent being the Cook Street Village Health Center, a mortgage brokerage, and a technology company. The space has been vacant for more than 6 months now, which is why we would require a temporary use permit to reactivate that space. In terms of the zoning itself, the site is zoned CR3M, which stipulates multiple dwelling use above the ground floor, which would be commercial use. The official community plan, as well as the Fairfield neighborhood plan, both designate the building's location as large urban village, which suggests mixed-use buildings of up to 4 stories and an FSR of 2.5 to 1. So bigger than what's on the site now. As noted, the second floor is fit out as office space, as you can see from the images here. Converting this vacant space to residential use in line with the zoning, while keeping the in-place tenants on the ground floor operational, is quite challenging from a logistical, financial, and technical standpoint. Accordingly, we are seeking a temporary use permit to allow the second floor to be returned to active use as office and commercial space. We're longstanding proponents of vibrant and animated communities, and we also believe it's really important to fully utilize the spaces we have available in our community from a sustainability perspective, particularly in the context of a growing community with increasing needs for services and the spaces that accommodate them. For those of you who aren't familiar with a temporary use permit, and that would include me as of 2 months ago, the purpose of a temporary use permit is to allow a use that does not comply with the zoning on a temporary basis. So as noted, what we're applying for is a temporary use permit to allow the second floor office space to be used for office and commercial use consistent with its historic use. There would be no changes to the exterior of the building. The temporary use permit would be valid for 3 years, at which point we are able to apply to the city for a 3-year extension. After that, it would apply, and I understand from the city, we would be able to reapply for another term at that time. And in terms of our long-term intentions for the site, assuming that we're able to activate the second floor and have the building kind of stabilize and get fully utilized, we don't have any intentions to redevelop this site in the short term. One other thing, we've been trying to meet with some different groups in the neighborhood, both to seek feedback on the notion of a temporary use permit, but also to get an understanding of what type of tenants, if it is approved, neighbors would like to see in the neighborhood and what people feel might be missing from the community. One thing we've heard the most is definitely health services. Someone's mentioned veterinary services, but we're certainly interested if you have any ideas either tonight or want to contact me in the future. We'd love to hear from people who live in the community what they feel would be positive addition. Anyway, that's the extent of my presentation tonight. And Joanne, I'll let you decide how you want to facilitate it in terms of questions and comments.
Okay, thank you, Karen. This is a great opportunity to share some of your ideas on what you'd like to see in the village. And with job properties. So if you see a public workspace would be great there. Is that something like, did you mean like, what's the one I'm thinking, like Quench?
Yeah, Quench and Regis and WeWork, yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's new an office space. Okay, like Quench, thank you. Yeah, if anybody remembers, it previously was, I don't know if you said this, Karen, but it previously was a combination of health services up there. We did go and have a look at it. It's a great space up there. It cannot be used though for, well, it would be very difficult to be used for accommodation space though. It doesn't have the capacity for plumbing. In addition to other things, it's not built for that.
I was thinking maybe something oriented towards kids. There are not a lot of children-oriented things, but there, it's a great place where parents could drop their kid
Activity
off,
centers, yeah.
go to Starbucks or whatever.
Yeah.
And things like a tutoring center,
Well, that's a good idea.
maybe music lessons or something.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a great central location for sure. So if you, can you put up the last slide again, Sharon?
Yeah.
If you think of anything after this, and you can just write down the email for Karen, then, or phone, you got some ideas. I think you said you're also speaking with the Cook Street Business Association.
We did, yeah, we chatted with them, just kind of through email and things like that, and reached out to the other people in the neighborhood to connect and get ideas. It's a new neighborhood for us.
That's great. Well, unless anybody has any other comments, we do have quite a lot to get through this evening. So thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. I looked at you and said thanks for listening, but thank you for presenting.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so the next presentation we will have is from 1160 Oxford. And this application has been before us several times, and before the city, in fact, as well. And I'll just give a very quick review of the situation. Originally, it was, the application was for 2 single-family dwellings and facing Chester, I believe. And the applicant did get to city council on it and was asked to go back and revisit the application because more density is required as per the official community plan. And Cook Street Village is actually mentioned in the official community plan as having opportunities for higher density. So the applicant did do that. And this is the another presentation that they're putting forward to the community for a different building. And so I would like to turn it over to Rachel Sandstrom, who is going to present on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, committee and public, for joining us this evening. Hopefully I can share my screen. And can you all see that?
No.
No. You can't see a picture of houses at all.
Unless they're all in the dark and there's a power failure.
No, they should be on your screen. Although I think I might be frozen. Oh yeah, I'm locked up a little bit, unfortunately. I have the blue circle of death. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I'm just reading. Can I ask that when the CALUC, hold on a second there, Rachel, I'm just looking at the. When the CALUC committee is speaking, if they can go on camera. Okay, I'm on camera, I'm right here. Oh, and sorry, well, actually, we're all on camera. You're on camera. Can you talk?
No, I think I have to sit there.
Oh, you want us to go over there? Okay. Okay, we will try, or we'll speak louder. Okay, Rachel, are you ready to go?
Yeah, can you see the screen that I'm sharing now?
Yes, we see 3 houses.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah, I locked up for a minute there. I wasn't sure if I was lost in space or not. Sometimes I am, whether I want to or not. So thank you very much again, committee and public, for entertaining this proposal. As Joanna mentioned, this is probably, I think, our 3rd time. We originally had a couple of single family dwellings proposed. We're asked to revisit that for more density on the street. And we got caught in a little bit of a bureaucratic glitch as far as that presentation to CALUC and the new COVID rules at the City Hall. So we were asked to actually start the process again. Hopefully we'll get it right this time. So again, I really appreciate everybody's patience with this one. So this is our proposal to set that corner of Oxford and Chester Avenue in Fairfield. It's a form and character that is seen in and around the neighborhood, mixed in with more traditional homes. So it's quite an eclectic collection of homes in this neighborhood, but there's high quality, and I hope that this also brings high quality to the neighborhood. This is a proposed duplex, and it's a great design because it doesn't look, symmetrical. It looks like a single family home, and it also has suites. So it's definitely doing its part to provide some housing in the neighborhood, and certainly a very walkable and vibrant neighborhood that'll be a wonderful place for families. This is our existing neighborhood. This is, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is the view from Chester. There's a fence and just a typical white stucco, I think circa 1950s home. Here it is at the bottom left of the screen. That's the existing house. And the other image is just representative of other homes in the neighborhood. Gives you an idea of the scale, 2 stories. This is a really neat bit of architecture over here in the center. So our site plan of the existing home is here. We're going to adhere to the existing footprint. There's a few existing trees that may remain. None of them are native. They're mostly planted landscaping trees. And our proposed duplex here on the right-hand side shows that existing footprint. I don't know if it's very clear, but I'll drag my cursor around. There's 2 parking spaces here, sort of in the upper left-hand corner of the site, one for each of the duplex units. There's a fence along the backyard, but there's a shared bicycle shed. I understand from Aaron, who gave the presentation the last time, that bicycle storage was very important. So this will be a shared shed that'll be divided down the middle so that, you know, it's secure for either owner. There's actually access through this backyard. So if you park here, you can walk to your unit here. Both have a nice exterior deck. And then the access to this right-hand duplex can come around from the front of the house as well. So that's a little bit more polished version of the plan I had before you. So again, with the parking, a fence and gate into this rear yard here, shared bicycle storage accessible for both sides, rear decks, and the front. There's access to the suite for this right-hand unit here, and for the suite for this left-hand unit through here on the Chester side of the street. So this shows the proximity to existing residences on either side. And there's the front elevation of the proposed home. Again, it doesn't look like a duplex in that it's not symmetrical. Interesting natural tones for the facade, glass. So it's a modern look, but it's also got a nice earthy look to it as well. And I think that the rest of this is just a lot of architectural detail that you probably can't see very well. So I don't know whether I'll drag you through that or not. So that's essentially it. I'm open to questions. I'm sure there might be a few. It's definitely a different presentation than the one we originally started with, but we think it'll be an asset to the neighborhood and again, provide that housing close to town that everyone's looking for. And I believe that's all. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Rachel. So we can take questions. I would need to see in the chat box if somebody, sorry, I'm now trying to figure out 2 different computers so that you're not looking at empty desks, chairs. So if this, does anybody online have a question for Rachel on behalf of this application? Okay, so curious to know where those living in the suites will park.
I understand that the parking we're providing is per the bylaw. So I believe it's anticipated that people that live in suites may or may not have cars. People certainly park on the street, or that they'll make use of their bicycles and not have cars at all. But it does comply with the parking regulations for the city of Victoria.
Another question, or maybe it's a comment. Thank you for respecting the current scale of development while incorporating density for 1160 Oxford. Nice to see it will be the same footprint and maintain green space. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment or ask a question from the community? Somebody says, I thought the 2 secondary suites required 1 more parking space.
I have to forgive me. I do not know the answer to that, but certainly that will be a requirement of this project as it goes through the rezoning process. So I can certainly email you that answer back, Joanna.
Okay, well, actually, it's not me. I'm reading it on behalf of somebody.
Oh, well, sorry, to the caller, I would be happy to answer that question. Do you want my email address so that I can respond or no?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes.
The person also suggests they may be misunderstanding the schedule of Schedule C of the bylaws.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to type my email address into the chat and then people can see it.
Okay.
Would that be appropriate?
I know we did receive quite a few emails that we will forward on to the city with the report. And there
Oh,
was,
great.
yeah, there was concern about parking because there were comments about the current parking on street is already very busy. And
Understood.
so there was concern that if you have a duplex with secondary suites, potentially you could have 4 cars, only room to park 2, therefore there's 2 more on the street, et cetera, et cetera.
So I will check into that parking bylaw.
Okay.
It's always parking. So I can, I'll certainly do that. But as we work through the process, certainly that will be a requirement of the rezoning as it goes through City Hall as well.
Anybody else? Anybody from the land use committee have a question for Rachel? Nope, nothing here. Nope. Geez, it's been 2 years since we last saw you, Rachel.
I know, I think I've gotten grayer.
Okay, so if we don't have any further questions, as I said, you can follow the process for this application through the development tracker. And there's, as I said, lots of information on there. The other thing you'll be able to do is provide a comment for 30 days online on the development tracker, or you can send an email to mayor-and-council@victoria.ca, or you can send it to us and we will send it to, we will forward it. However, you can go directly to mayor and council. They and the staff do see all the emails pertaining to any development. So if that's it for 1160 Oxford, I would like to thank Rachel, and we can then move on to Kipling, Fairfield, Thurlow.
Thanks, everyone.
Presentation. Thanks, Rachel. So we just need you to take your, yeah, there you go. And I do believe Bart Johnson's going to be presenting, and the architect for the building is actually online as well. So Bart has 15 minutes to make his presentation, and then we'll take questions afterwards.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you see my screen here?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you for having me. I'm Bart Johnson, I'm the developer, and also on the call is Sebastian Guerin, who is the principal architect working on this. Similar to the last presentation, we've been here about 2.5 years ago, and it's been reviewed a few times by staff. It went to the committee of the whole. There was a referral motion to go back and take another look at it, principally with some of the form and character concerns that were raised. This is what we've come back with in terms of a revision. So look forward to presenting what we've done here. What we're proposing is 9 townhomes over 2 lots at 1400 Fairfield Road and 349 Kipling. They range in size from 940 to about 2300 and 2 to 4 bathrooms. We're proposing 9 parking stalls in garages that are attached, 1 clustered with 7 parking spaces and 1 with 2 fronting onto Thurlow Road. We have quite an extensive bike parking room with enough space for 34 long-term bicycle spaces. That's principally due to the location of this site being quite close to the Richardson All Ages and Abilities bike route, as well as its proximity to the downtown core. And in terms of amenities, as we did last time, we are proposing a community bench on the corner of Kipling and Thurlow, as well as extensive civil upgrades. On the screen, you'll see the existing houses that are there. One's a non-conforming duplex, as well as the small single-family home situated on Fairfield Road. There is a tenant assistance plan in place. It's been approved already by the City of Victoria. This will be missing middle housing, and by missing middle, meaning between single-family homes and low to mid-rise apartments. I think sometimes it can be confused with affordable housing. It is in the middle. The detached home prices, especially for new construction, are quite high, higher than I even was here last time, with a new construction just up the road, about 5 lots over, just selling for over $2 million, and most new construction in the area over 1.75 million or higher. Here's a site context map, just showing where it is across with regards to its position by the elementary school, as well as across from the 2 parks, and situated on, well, one of the 2 properties situated on the Fairfield corridor, which is a major artery. In terms of how it aligns with the plan, what the Fairfield plan says around this location is on the Fairfield corridor, up to 3 stories and 1-to-1 FSR, and in other areas up to 8.3 meters and 2.5 stories in height. Our feedback from planning was to treat these lots as separate yet consolidated. So that's what we've done in this proposal, having 2 building clusters, one on Fairfield Road and Kipling, that is more dense and is higher, closer to the 10.5 meters and 3 stories, and the other one, which is 2.5 stories and closer to 8.3 meters, as well as within the 0.85 FSR in terms of our vision. And I'm sure most of you know the area quite well, but it is quite walkable. And in terms of transportation, as well as the bike route, there is bus stops immediately in front of Fairfield Road, the Fairfield Road property, that go in both directions, which is very convenient. In terms of the architecture in the neighborhood, it is quite diverse. These top ones are the ones that these were across the street, the modern ones that we had initially modeled our development proposal off of. Here's the immediate neighbors, which are more character and form, as well as a more traditional yet more recent construction. There's also, modern buildings, some that are transitional, and where we landed in terms of form and character, as we'll show you, was in that transitional form. In terms of the site itself, it is sloping away from Fairfield Road about 3.5 meters, which does create some challenges, as well as we are restricted from having a driveway on Fairfield Road as the busier of the roads. And based on feedback, we're encouraged to put parking in the center of the property for safety, as well as on Thurlow as the lesser of the roads. In terms of the streetscape, this shows the context with 2.5 stories on Thurlow, and part of that relates to the slope, as well as getting the parking in there to have 1 stall per unit, which is with Schedule C for the on-site parking. We are asking for a visitor parking variance of 1, and we have a parking study that I can speak to if there are questions about that, which indicates that there is ample on-street parking and that there will not be disruption. And then here's the elevation on Fairfield Road, which is clearly presents as a duplex, as there are the duplexes up the road, and presenting as 2 stories to the street. We did have a window overlay and work to avoid the windows overlapping. These upper floors here are bedrooms that are facing the neighbors, no principal rooms, and these up here are actually bathrooms. So this is actually above, at 7 feet above the mirror. So those are not viewing spaces by any means. This is a site plan. I'm not going to dig into that. I'm just going over it. And lots on the floor plan. I'm happy to speak to any of these if there are questions around them, but I'm Not gonna kind of dive into them because they're probably hard to see anyways. Here's the shadowing study. Just due to the orientation of the buildings, the shadows are cast primarily on the streets. We are stepped back, much of the site is stepped back 5 meters from the neighbors, whereas the block primarily is about 1.5 as per R1B zoning between the buildings on the street, on Thurlow and Fairfield Road. And then there, of course, will be some shadowing in the evening, just due to the orientation of the sun. Can't always avoid that. There is shadowing now with some trees, and that's what the shadowing inside looks like. What's going on here? This next slide just illustrates where we've come in terms of transition from the modern to the transitional, as well as some of the changes in the materiality, using wood shingles, some board and batten style finishings, as well as the peaked roofs, and incorporating cedar as well, which into the covered areas. And we're including some minor stucco, but keeping some of the consistencies with what we previously proposed, which there was, as well as the color palette, which was based on the initial CALUC. So this is the elevation on Thurlow and Kipling, which we refer to as block 1. This here on the top left is the Thurlow elevation. This here is what would be seen on Kipling Street, the lower half of Kipling. All of the units have an entry that is facing the road, which is consistency with design guidelines for attached dwellings, and encouraged when possible. This is the rear, which is kind of a walkout off of the kitchen area, as well as the yards for these 3 units here. The unit 4 and 5 are located above the parking structures in a 1.5 story, which is quite peaked in those units. And this here is a 5-foot privacy wall, and there's lattice as well that goes up for green screening. It's being proposed. In terms of green features, ready for solar panels in terms of rough in on the roof, roughed in for car chargers, for those who will be using that, water efficient landscaping, the bike parking, which I'll have an illustration of next slide, as well as energy efficient light fixtures, just kind of bringing it up, as well as with the new step code requirements, water efficient plumbing, low VOC finishes. Now here's the bike room with the bike ramp that's coming down from Kipling Street. It was designed to easily accommodate a cargo bike, to really encourage that, which is what's really being emphasized by the city in trying to get cars off of the road. Here is where some of the extended bikes can go. Each unit would get roughly three bike stalls, as well as a bike wash and a bike maintenance station, and an electric door to make it easier to get bikes in and out and onto the roads for use. In terms of landscape plan, in terms of the trees being removed, there's existing 19 trees, 14 are proposed to be removed. 2 of them which are protected, one of them is in fair poor condition, and one of them is in moderate condition. And they're in a cluster that are currently located on the center of the property, like a red cedar sort of hedge that wasn't a hedge that had grown together. We're proposing to put in more trees than we're taking out, a total of 25 trees. This also shows the rear patio areas and incorporating trees for screening where we can between those units as they will grow up, as well as a number of boulevard trees. Here's the tree protection plan, just showing that cluster in the middle, which is where most of those trees are in a kind of a hedge formation currently. And just some of the varieties of plantings. Many of them are native, such as Gary oak, dogwood, Pacific dogwood, as well as several grasses and screening and vines, which are similar to what was initially presented at ADP as well, and they were not concerns. And some of the, as well as the landscaping, how we have it set up, was based on feedback from the ADP, Advisory Design Panel. I do have a couple of minutes, so I can speak to the Watt parking analysis. So they did look, I did an observational study of parking in the area and over parking on Fairfield Road here, as well as kind of where it runs, just in terms of how would visitor parking be impacted. And of course, if other people were to park on the street, how would that impact the neighborhood? There is quite a fair amount of parking they found, with approximately 64 spaces being available, and at peak demand being 30% of parking stalls were used, and that doesn't include the 64. So the conclusion of that study was that it would not have a significant impact on the area. So I can leave it there and kind of open the floor for questions. I'm sure there are a few.
Thank you, Bart. Yeah, this application has definitely come a long way in different variations. If you would like to ask a question, you don't have to put the question in the chat box. You can actually go live and unmute and ask your question. We don't have a problem with that at all. So I can open up the questions to the floor if anybody would like to ask a question of Bart or Bart.
Sebastian.
Oh, and Sebastian, sorry.
Yeah, I'm also here.
Sebastian's the architect, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi there, it's Melissa Mahab here. I'm at 432 Kipling Street. Could you go back to your parking assessment, please, your parking study? Can I ask when this was conducted, over what period of time? Was it during like busy season, summer months when we have markets going on? Like, I just want a bit more detail on this versus just here's a snapshot without much background.
Yeah, I can, I don't know if can you see my screen now? Does it change?
Yep.
Yeah, it does. I can just go to when the observations were. They did do a Saturday, I'm not sure. Here's when the observations were in March. So evening, afternoon, 2 mornings, including Saturday morning. So that was when they did their 5 observations.
Okay, so it's over 1 week in spring.
Yeah, I do know on Saturdays with the market, it does get busy in the summertime.
Bart, I have a follow-up question.
Sorry, excuse me. Just a minute. Is that the same from the same person?
No.
Same house.
Same. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm between 2 computers. So.
Thank you for presenting this, and it went by pretty quickly. Can you tell me some of you talked about the changes that you've done to conform. Can you highlight some of the major changes that are not conforming? So for example, did you increase the unit size? You talked about the heights. Are there exemptions that you're looking for that would impede some of those current city requirements? And then also, my third and last point is your shadow study. It was pretty small, and I know that you tried to articulate that those are the shadow times, but I noticed that some of the shadow times you ended, I believe it was 1 or 2 o'clock. Can you explain why you didn't do a more wholesome 12-hour window?
I could maybe defer that to Sebastian, but the times that were taken were 9, 12, and 3 on the shadow study. I'll go to the shadow study.
This is very typical at time.
Yeah.
When you do a shadow study, we can take other time, but what you can notice here is most of the shadow is casting on the street or the park in front. The south property being the one that adjacent to the neighbors there.
Can you make it bigger?
Can you address the question on, did you add additional units from your last submission, and if there's other non-conforming specifically to the height?
The changes?
Yeah.
Bart, do you want to go ahead or do you want me to go ahead?
You can go ahead, Sebastian.
There are many changes that we've done to address a lot of the comments that we received from the neighbors and the city. Maybe one of the most apparent is, oh, you have a slide there. That's good. Maybe you want to zoom a little bit, Bart. You have a lot of room around. There's a lot of gray. Yeah. So there's a lot of form and character. I think that's the one that is the most apparent. There was also, I mean, there's the peak roof, slope roof that was people wanted to see.
Yep.
So
Sorry,
that,
did the city ask you to increase the number of units as well too?
no, I think the number of units, what did we have again?
We had originally had 8 plus 2 suites. So there's no suites, and now it's 9 units is what this proposal is for.
So we had 8 plus 2 suites, and now we have 9 unit. There was a lot of positive comments from the community about the size of the unit, that they were happy to see larger units. So we kept that as well. We've added bike room, which I think is a huge benefit to the community and to these owners. Reduced height and density as well. And maybe that's one thing that we want to highlight. You went quickly over the site plan, Bart. You want to go back on it? You don't have a site plan before and after, Bart, do you?
No, I don't.
So you may not remember, but the last time there was actually, we were coming from Thurlow, if you want to show with your cursor, and we're actually accessing, and every unit had a garage. And a lot of the site was used for driving the car around. I mean, it was just one way. So we thought there's pros and cons to everything. But there was comments that we need to bring yards to most of the units. So now you can see that there's a lot of a backyard, rear yard here for the different units.
So I remember what it was like before. And so there was no center driveway coming off of Kipling before, right? That was all just solid housing. And then you came up in between the new development and the other house on Thurlow. And then you had angle parking sort of underneath.
Yes, angled, yes, angled, but then you were coming out on Kipling.
You're coming out about here.
Around 2/3 and
Oh, okay.
right there.
All right.
It was a one-way.
Yeah, with a duplex at the end where we park 2 underneath there.
Okay. I'd like to just give the floor to Emily Atkins, who's got her hand up.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my video working. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I was just wondering how the height compares to the previous plans. I might have missed that earlier in the presentation. And then also where you're planning on putting your heating and air conditioning units, because I know that they were on the roof in the original plan.
Yeah, the height of the clusters has changed. So one of the requests of the city was to treat these lots as separately. So I can't remember what Sebastian, maybe you can help with pulling up those heights of that they were.
Yeah, I can open a previous set of drawings while you.
I know that cluster 1, which was 6 units, was higher than 8.3 meters to the top of the flat roof, which wasn't consistent with the Fairfield plan for that particular site. We were treating it as consolidated and blending them, but we've been requested to separate those out to have them so that this is traditional residential area. This is Fairfield corridor. So, this one says up to 10.5. This one says up to 8.3 meters. So we've brought them consistently as a blend. In terms of the density, I believe we were at 0.9, and now this is slightly higher at 0.92.
And that height, is that to the top of the peak of the roof?
It's to the midpoint of a sloped roof is how the city of Victoria measures their heights.
Okay. And then what about the heating and air conditioning units?
We have placed them, if you look at the elevation bar, if you can bring the elevation from the south facade. Or maybe a roof plan. So on unit, the one on Fairfield, 8 and 9. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a bit of an overhang here that we'll be able to put the unit right beside, like on top of those bay windows. So they'll be able to be screened a little bit and be right to just using for those occupants. Those units that are above the parking here, it'll be part of the rear patio. On top of 8 and 9 as well as part of the roof. There's I think we're going to be able to put them somewhere in here. There's a bit of a flatter portion of the roof, and it'll be very similar for block 1, where the situation on the block 1 will be more at ground level there, where the patios are.
In the rear was the building.
In the rear.
Can you just show on, if you can show on this particular image, when you said the height is measured at the midpoint of the roof, what the midpoint is?
Right here from average grade. So it's the height to the midpoint of the slope roof. So take the middle of the
between the ridge and the eave, midpoint.
Right about there.
This is the bylaw from the city. We're just following the bylaw.
So there was a question about, apparently somebody had said you said the buildings were lower in height than previously, but now it seems like they aren't. So are they higher, lower?
The higher height comes from cluster 2, which was revised to kind of give it some interest in the middle of the block, where the higher heights were envisioned on Fairfield Road corridor. So it's this one in right here.
That's the one facing Porter?
Yes.
Porter Park, sorry.
Yeah. And just on that comment, getting, part of the great thing about the CALUC process is getting additional feedback. So, we were, as things were coming in, I was talking with Sebastian, and, we're looking at bringing that down, which would look something like this. It's rough, but you can see the difference, if this is coming up as a concern for the height, that would drop it a whole story, essentially.
So how does that affect obviously it affects the square footage then?
Yeah, it brings everything down. It brings the FSR down to below 8.85, where it's currently at 0.99, because it's a whole story that's being removed, as well as the height being dropped by quite a bit to
Can you keep it at 3 bedrooms, just smaller bedrooms?
It'd be 3 bedrooms, but it'd be 2 bedrooms on the upper floor and then a basement bedroom at the rear.
And while we were talking about the park, there was a question, given the limited green space for these units, and if families will be purchasing them, could you consider working with the city to enhance the playgrounds at Porter Park, both of which need updating?
That's not something that we've broached. Could explore it. Be quite a significant amenity. Those are quite costly.
And Cynthia Woodman, you have your hand up?
Did I unmute myself? Let me see now.
Yeah, you did. We can hear
Good. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. I just, going back to the air conditioning and heating units. Are you using heat exchangers?
Do you mean like a heat pump?
Like a heat pump? Yes, sorry, heat pump, yeah.
Yes.
So has there been any consideration about noise? Because those are noisy.
I mean, there is a noise bylaw and there are requirements around what can and can't be used and their locations. Just looking at where they're best suited is up higher. But I mean, we'd be looking to purchase as quiet as possible units.
So there's going to be 9 of them.
Yep.
I submit that will be loud for the neighbors.
I would say that it would be consistent with, other multifamily buildings. Like
Yeah.
the decibel level is not that high for the heat pumps though.
But it's kind of this low background hum all the time, right? Like it's going to be a hum and a buzz. So I think that's something to consider. I think that will really change the quality of the neighborhood if you're going to have 9 of those, because they are quite loud when they get going. I don't know what to suggest about that.
Yeah, I think it depends on what models are selected.
I was just at a house with a new one over on Salt Spring Island, and I mean, I don't know if it was the top of the line or anything, but it definitely has a hum to it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you can put in the quietest, of course, but still, I mean, to me, that's a big consideration.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. I have another question here. The fact that Richardson has now had traffic rerouted down Kipling has increased the traffic on Kipling Street incredibly. Have you done a traffic study since this has been implemented? With the additional 9 units being proposed, there is going to be a number of more cars. How is this being addressed for current residents? Our streets are becoming unsafe for children and animals in the neighborhood, and your proposal will hugely impact this. So I guess the question is, have you looked at updating the traffic study since the bike lanes? Well, the bike lanes aren't finished yet, but they're still being developed on Richardson. And there has been acknowledgement from Kipling residents that their street's getting very busy.
We didn't do a traffic study. We did the parking study. We haven't been requested to do a traffic analysis for this project from engineering in our consultations with them. I mean, just my experience with the neighborhood and the site is with that new 4-way stop in place that has slowed things up quite a bit. So when we started this process, that was one of the principal concerns, was traffic, people zooming and ripping up Kipling Street. I'm not sure exactly when that 4-way stop was put in, but it's quite recent. And that has really kind of changed the flow of traffic in that area.
Sorry, where's the 4-way stop?
There's a 4-way on the corner of Kipling and Thurlow, right here, right across from, so that right there.
Okay.
It was just put in. So that's really changed the way that traffic is flowing, because everyone has to stop on all directions, which to me is a lot safer, and was one of the things that I was requested to engage on with the initial proposal that we put forward a number of years ago.
Yeah, and I think, not that I want to stir the hornet's nest or anything, but like every bike lane development in this city, it takes a while for drivers to understand and realize that there's new routing. And I mean, I myself have been caught on Richardson, and I've had to turn down Kipling, and I'm like, I don't want to do this because I don't want to go down Kipling, because I know that people who live on Kipling don't want more cars there, but I didn't have a choice, and because I screwed up. But I now know I won't. So I think once cars do get used to it, it should hopefully not be as bad as it is. That said, sorry, I need to get to another question here. If we could go back to the shadow study, and if we could make it a bit bigger this time, so we could just see it a bit better. This question says, it comments about a bunch of things, but this the study showing shadowing on neighborhood properties after 3 p.m. should be required. The last proposal showed 6. So I actually didn't quite hear everything about the shadow study, and I'm not sure if the person is asking for something that you actually did present or not.
I understand from the question that maybe there was a 6 p.m. in the previous. I mean, we can provide it. There's
No, they're asking for it to be 3 p.m.
oh, okay. Well, either way, I mean, we can
Oh,
totally.
no, it was 3 p.m. The last proposal was 6. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, either way, we can provide.
So you can
mean-
provide a shadow study after 6 p.m.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
this
6
is
p.m. in the
standard.
winter will be pretty
Yeah,
much.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all shadow, yeah. No, in the time frame of the months that have more sun, for sure. Let's see what else we have. Back to the playground. We are, sorry, wait a second. We are currently exploring fundraising for a new playground at Margaret Jenkins Elementary, and they start around $20,000 to $30,000. Is that too much given the size of this proposed development?
So it's a question around, am I gonna make a donation right now?
No, that's not the point. I think the point that they're saying how much it costs to upgrade a playground in a schoolyard. And so it was just back to the same person's question, that they have a dollar figure now. And is that something that you could entertain? And you don't have to commit to anything. I'm just passing along.
Well, I think Bart said he's willing to discuss with the city if he's interested, but maybe I'll let him comment.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see. I know that, I mean, those are all like municipal and public, and to see, I guess, what are they looking for, how it could fit in the context of an amenity. It's not something that I think is typically tied, but I can reach out to, I think it would be, well, it'd be parks for the ones, so they're 2 separate, right? So there's, did I hear Margaret Jenkins? So that's.
No. So Margaret Jenkins, she was just giving an example of how much it costs because
Okay.
they're doing a fundraising at Margaret Jenkins. So it's my understanding that Porter Park is probably municipal, but Porter Park is municipal and the school playground is the school. So again, it's my understanding it's 2 different entities.
I will, I'll take that one to the planner, Alec Johnston, and just see what his thoughts are on.
And speaking of play areas, how big are the backyards? It's difficult to see in the site plan. Do all the units have a yard? And is there a plan for exterior lighting?
We don't have an exterior lighting plan that we've developed at this stage. The yards are, well, it's 5 meters from the door. So it's like what, 5 by 5.5 about, Sebastian, I think.
Yeah, there's a few steps to go down in the yard, and then there's 4.25 meter width, well, depth, depending on how you look at it. By yeah, they're a bit square, a bit wider than deep. I don't have the dimension right there.
It's about 5.48 by
around 5 by 5.
Yeah,
5 by 5 meter.
Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at the rest of these questions. Some of these are more comments than questions. Are the heat pumps going to be visible from the street on any of the units? If yes, and why are they not shown in your drawings?
they're not going to be visible from the street.
Okay, thank you. Somebody had their hand up here. Alyssa. Alyssa, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. It's more of just a comment and to elaborate on a question that was asked previously that I don't actually feel was answered appropriately. I think fundamentally the neighborhood just doesn't agree with this being rezoned multifamily. And Mr. Johnson's assertion that having 9 heat pumps isn't louder than any other multifamily development, I think doesn't reassure anybody, because we don't have multifamily developments of this scale in the neighborhood. This is definitely, you can call this is a townhouse complex, and the fact that you keep kind of skirting around that is not helpful for the neighborhood at all. But my question is, what setbacks or what I guess requirements are you trying to get a variance on from the city? Because it looks like the setback on both Kipling and the setback on the neighboring units has been decreased quite significantly. And the previous question also is just, what variances are you requesting? Because it doesn't appear that any of the current kind of zoning requirements are being followed by this proposal at all.
Well, with regards to the setbacks, they're not, this is a site-specific zone that we're asking for, which is fairly typical for these. So there's not hard requirements. That's a conversation with the planner on what would be supportable, and that's something that we're working with them on now. And we have been, or as well as, what does the front look like? What are their expectations with regards to their design guidelines for attached residential is what we're calling it, not which includes townhouses and primarily townhouses. And that's, yeah. Does that answer your question?
No.
Can you?
I don't
With
think
the
that's
setbacks, we're not asking for variances for the setbacks because that's a site-specific zone. So there's not, it's not the same as when there are hard numbers on it.
okay. So, I mean, again, this is maybe drawing back to a previous point, but the last proposal was very clear that it wasn't approved due to the number of changes that have been requested and the feedback provided by the neighborhood. And why did you increase the density to 9 units from 8 when the neighborhood has been clearly saying that this is definitely too dense, and the FSR for this property is already exceeding what is clearly a standard for the neighborhood?
Well, the density, as I mentioned earlier, we're exploring bringing the density down in terms from an FSR perspective. The number of units was actually 10 because it was 8 plus 2 suites. So, the difference between, strata and rental.
Say that though, because the suites weren't on the previous plan. So that's interesting.
They were.
Always 8 units and there were no suites in the basement.
There were suites. The city had they in conversation with them, they wanted suites. So density was to 10.
They were part of the plan.
They were, yeah. No, maybe not the original CALUC, but maybe following the CALUC, I think.
Oh, but the density is lower than before. The number of unit.
So sorry, I'm just going to jump in here. So if there were residential suites as per the city's request, it would have been in a list of revisions that would have been on the development tracker. That did not come before the CALUC that I can recall. I remember there being 8 units.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'm not saying that there's right or wrong here. It's just that's why it's important to, if you're really concerned about a certain development, is to pay attention to I'm not saying you didn't, but to pay attention to the development tracker, because I can tell you from various other townhouse developments in this area, there have been extensive revisions, and 902 Fairfield Ave is one. The Rhoda was another one. And so this is why they take so long to actually get built, is because there's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So we didn't see that, but then the CALUC was required just because of the extent of the changes for this time around, plus the time frame that had gone on. If we can just move on here, can you give an example of another 9-unit building in Fairfield that where develop on only 2 properties, same land size, that have been approved by the city? Well, the Rhoda was one of them. I'm not sure what the actual size was, but there were only 2 houses where the Rhoda was. 502 Fairfield Bay, there was 1 house, very, very large house. So there are,
And in those properties are
They
all
were,
fronting
and there were
Fairfield
22
Way, which
units
is a
in Roto.
which is a busier, higher density street. The majority of this development is on Kipling, which is a quiet side street.
Yes.
Well, there's no other houses on the block of Kipling that it's fronting. And that lot is part of the Fairfield corridors, the 1400 Fairfield Road. Yes.
Yeah, so why don't you just have higher density on Fairfield and lower density on Kipling?
That's what we're proposing, which is consistent with the Fairfield plan, which is up to 1-to-1 and 3 stories on Fairfield Road and up to 0.85 and 8.3 meters on other areas, which is the Thurlow property. That's what the Fairfield plan says. I think it's page 82. I was looking at it. So we're working to be consistent with what's been proposed and approved in the Fairfield neighborhood plan interactions. That we're basing this off of.
oh, sorry, Mary, yes? Oh, sorry, if I could just,
Yeah.
Mary, hold on, just let me just.
No,
go
that's
back.
fine. I can wait.
Okay, thanks. I'll just go back again to 902 Fell Bay, because I live in Gonzales, and so, yeah, it's busy. It might be busy on Fell Bay, but it's not that busy on Quamiton. It's definitely not busy on Redfern. So that is an example. There's 18 units being proposed in there. So there are other examples.
And that lot is at least 2 to 3 times the size of this property.
Yeah, but there's 19 townhouses going in. So there are other developments that are also being applied for. Anyway, Mary.
Thank you. I'm going to ask about something no one's been asking about, and it went so fast. And I really want to know about the trees. And the COPS 26 was talking about trees. And I see that I would want it made clear how many trees are being taken out and which are the trees that are being left. It's very important. I'm not talking about plantings. Plantings take 60 years to be useful, really useful in climate, like for climate change.
Here's an illustration. And some of the municipal trees, 2 of them, we've been requested by Parks to remove.
Why? Where?
These 2 right here on the corner of Fairfield and Kipling.
Why do they want them removed?
One was to increase the boulevard to create separation from Kipling and Fairfield, which is one of their objectives. And the other one was, I think, and they're both cherry trees, which as well as they're just not drought tolerant as the climate is changing, as you.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, they're both cherry trees.
No, is that bunch in the middle on down Kipling? It has that monkey tree. It has some tall trees. Is that any of that, or how much of it is being saved?
That's where the driveway is going. So that's this cluster here. And that's all being removed.
What? You're going to remove the, sorry, whoa.
It's typical.
It's that particular monkey tree is very interesting, and it can go higher, and there are so it's all being removed. Is that the case?
Yes.
Well, which trees are being saved? Any?
They're primarily the boulevard trees.
Well, that's not your property. That's
Yes, so it's being
And,
cleared.
and to be clear, you know, in the arborist report, several of these trees are not in great condition and health as it is. So, you know, when you're planting Western red cedars and they're quite close together, that's not what how they're supposed to be. They're supposed to have space to breathe and grow. So several of them are, you know, fair and moderate
Okay, that I
condition
hear.
that are here.
And that's what your arborist says. I've had distinct little, in the city in the past, sometimes we've provided another arborist. So I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. You've answered my question, and I totally, that monkey tree is really interesting and has some trees around it, but in itself, it's a bit, it's a Chilean pine, I gather, and it's of interest. Is there any way you could do this and keep some trees? I'm sorry, I'm very angry because every tree you take out is pulling. When you pull trees, when you take trees out, there's a wide swath around, other trees die, and you're losing your main help against climate change. Could you consider changing it?
The challenge that we are facing is actually the highway access bylaw, which limits where you can put driveways on your lot. So for example, we can put nothing on Fairfield Road, which limits, you know, there are no trees there, which would be a great place to put a driveway and come in, but we're not allowed to do that. Engineering wouldn't allow it. The same as you wrap around the corner. So that really pushes the parking to the center of the lot, which is where we've been encouraged to bring it, because there's just restrictions everywhere else on the site.
And are you going to be, at one point, are you going to be digging deep or blasting for the houses?
We're not sure if blasting will be required. From the geotechnical information we have, we do not believe that it will be, based on the depths. We do not believe that there will be any blasting.
Yes, well, you realize this area, and I'm at 435 Kipling, and this whole area is deep red on the seismic map. And I've had my house upgraded with a seismic work just to manage to survive anything. What are you doing about that?
Well, it'd be properly engineered, and that would need to be approved as part of the building permit.
Okay.
Up to seismic standards.
Not to seismic?
To be seismic to the current requirements, which are quite extensive.
Yes, they have to be.
Mary, do you have another question?
Just for a moment, I'm pausing. I'm going to make a comment that adding that extra when your plan had been turned down distinctly is just not acceptable, okay? And that removes more trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Cynthia, you had your hand up? Cynthia Kirkman?
Am I?
Are you Cynthia?
Maybe you're muted, Cynthia?
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. You know, it might be that the figures are whizzing past the, but what I'm hearing is you say that you are following the Fairfield plan in terms of density and FSR, but then you are also asking for setbacks that you say are site specific, and that's that's what you do with conversations with the planner. So are we made privy to this? Like who?
It's all that information is in.
It's confusing because on one hand it says you say you're following the plan, and then on the other hand you say you're asking for site-specific setbacks, so you're not following the plan. So
it's site-specific zoning. So with like R1B zoning as an example, they have like 1.5 meter setback from the interior yard setback. So if I were to ask for 1 meter, I'd be asking for a variance there.
Yeah.
But with the site-specific zoning, which is for the attached residential, it's not like a set number that you're asking for a variance for.
So what are you asking for that's site-specific? What variance are you asking?
That the whole zoning is site-specific. So it is whatever is approved by council would then be this, the setbacks for that site, because it'd be under a development permit.
So it's not really following the plan, the Fairfield, the community plan.
It's following. Yes, it is. It is. I'm not sure. The setbacks are site specific based on, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, I guess I'm coming away feeling like it. You say that you are following the community plan.
So like generally speaking,
in terms of height and density, but then
like when I talk, say here's an example, okay, and maybe Sebastian, you can. So like for the setback, if I were to go to the setback here on Thurlow, it says generally setbacks in front yards to be 5 to 6 meters. And we have it goes from, somewhere in that area up to 7.5. So that'd be generally compliant with what the plan is stating. So the planner goes through all of the elements in the Fairfield plan, and then treats it as a whole around the supportability of the project.
Yeah.
So that'd be an example, but it doesn't say like it needs to be 3 meters or 4 meters or 5 meters or 6 meters. It's not in that way. It provides some leeway for variance. So if you're going to provide more, fenestration or kind of articulation, then that's discretionary based on what the planning department sees as appropriate.
Right.
Fitting in. So I hope that makes sense. It's
yeah, it's the specifics I have to burrow down into and look at, but thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I would encourage you to have a look at the Fairfield plan as it relates to the townhouses as a type, as well as there are emerging missing middle guidelines, as well as for attached dwellings, and the city is continuing to work on those and refine them. And the latest version that we've submitted is working to be consistent with those as a kind of a moving target.
Right.
The setbacks are meeting what the city's has been requiring us to do.
Yeah, but I mean the height isn't, and the density, right? You're asking for variances there still. Is that right?
No, we're meeting.
It wasn't before, and the revision it is.
Okay.
But what we're hearing is that there's for like those center units on that are appear to be 3 stories. What we're hearing is it would like to be seen those as being lower.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
so
And you're considering that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And the other quick question about the heat pumps. Are you saying that you are going to go for the most expensive, best, like quietest ones that are on the market? And is there any way to house them in some sort of wood casing or something to dampen the sound?
The ones we'll have to think about how they attach if we do reduce the height here, because they've set in. But I would like to have them recessed so they're not visible or limited visibility from any angle. Sebastian, you have some experience with how to do that?
Well, you just highlighted the fact that if we reduce that 1 story, on those units specifically, we're going to lose those screen and bay windows that we were using for that. But yeah, I mean, we'll work with consultants to find the best solution.
So when you showed us the drawing before, were all the heat pumps facing Thurlow, the neighbors at Thurlow? I know they were at the back of the units. I couldn't quite figure it
We're
out.
facing the adjacent property line.
Yeah.
On Thurlow.
Inside.
Inside, not Thurlow.
But what I'm hearing is is the heat pumps are being quite. I mean, I think I need to do some more research into how quiet they can be.
Yeah.
As well as maybe some other heating sources.
Yes, that would be very much appreciated, because I do feel that 9 of those would create quite a noise.
And I think, yeah, especially these top ones where you're in kind of the higher level would get hotter. But if we're taking that off, then maybe that also means it doesn't need to have a heat pump there. So we will look into getting what's quietest if we do go that route, or whether we go with different heating source.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just a few other comments here on the comment box. Comparing the Roto, not being able to compare the Roto development to this because other buildings of higher, bigger heights, bigger buildings are around there. And also that the Roto had a ton of pushback. And I can honestly say it did, and 902 Foul Bay is also experiencing a lot of pushback, and that was about a year ago. So this is not unusual. And I wasn't trying to say that everything was like this one. I'm just saying that there are other examples. There is also some work being done here for you, Bart, by Heather McDonald. She's giving some examples of developers contributing to park improvements. So there's a website there, sorry, a link to a Victoria News and Times columnist articles, and comment that site specific means you can't live with any of our local zoning. Well, no, that's exactly what it means. That they're looking for a site specific zoning, not the zoning that is there. Is there anybody that has a question that doesn't pertain to anything that's already been discussed? We've discussed height, we've discussed heat pumps, we've discussed trees, parking, the trees around the driveway that are being removed. If we don't have any questions or comments from the community, we do open up the floor to the Community Association Land Use Committee members. So I would like to do that. And
I have one question that I don't think has been discussed.
Sorry, and who's that?
It's Ravi Mahavir, 432 Kipling Street.
Okay, yeah, you can ask your question, then we'll go to the.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think earlier you were showing the cost of an average home in Fairfield, and I think you were quoting numbers like 2.4 million along those lines. And I just want to ask a question. Are you saying that this is affordable housing? Because you've given a benchmark. So sorry, was the answer no?
The answer is no. This is making up missing middle housing, which is what is between detached single family homes and apartments. It's something that is considered that the city is pushing for. It's an alternative to single family homes, which has several of the same attributes with sharing a wall.
Okay, perfect. And I think the question was asked at the last session, and this is just a follow-up. So you've given a benchmark for single family homes. What do you anticipate the range to be for your units that you're building?
You know, that's a very tough question to answer, given that these things take so many years to process. I cannot really give a number right now. Construction prices soared in the last year with the lumber crisis. It's too hard to pin down the present state or what it's going to be. So when this gets, if and when this gets approved.
So basically you're hoping to build with high costs, but you have not considered what your return on your investment would be. I don't believe it.
They're going to be, I mean, they're going to be market priced. So
What is the market price for units of that size in this area?
I haven't looked at the numbers for that for some time. I think the greatest comp would be probably what the Roto was selling for. And I think they ranged, they were around 900 to $1 million, just over $1 million.
Thank you. I'd just like to make one closing comment. I don't believe you have not done that study. I believe you are not being open and honest with the people of Fairfield. And this is why you continue to get the pushback. It started off with a development for a daycare, and then you couldn't make your money there. So now you went to an 8-unit and call it 10 if you want. And now you've gone to a 9-unit. I think honesty goes a long way, Bart and Sebastian, and you too. Just listening to you, don't believe a word you say. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, we need you to be respectful, please.
I'm very respectful. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, sorry, I just need to read this so I can see if it's anything new. Okay, this is not anything new. So Ashley, you had a question from the CALUC, you had a question?
Joanna, thanks. Yeah, my question was similar to the previous question regarding the pricing. I was just curious to know, the range, because early in the presentation, it's estimated, the going rate is 1.7 million to 2 million. And I was wondering if, these are luxurious apartments, if it's going to be priced over 1.2 million or so. So I was just trying to get a better understanding of the price range for these apartments, which I feel is important.
I mean, I think that the one unit that is closer to a house would probably be priced somewhere in that range, probably north of or 1.2. But that would be based on construction prices today. That's based on the current market, with neither of which we know where they're going, as well as what interest rates are going to do, and all sorts of other variables. So that's, the market is the market in terms of what people are able to sell for when they're market condos, market stratas, market houses.
Anybody else from the CALUC have a question? I think Dave is online, Dawn, for Julie Owen.
No questions from Dave.
Yeah. Sorry, was that Dave?
Yeah, just saying no questions.
Okay, thanks. I think Emily's got, Julie has a question.
Sure.
And there's another comment on the box, on the comment box.
I'm wondering about what accessibility features these units will have.
Sebastian, are you?
Well,
the accessibility.
There's steps to go up, so.
Yeah.
So none.
It was not accessible.
It was not a criteria that we were asked to comply to or take into account.
Okay. Then I would suggest considering that in future revisions.
I think townhouses are a little bit trickier because they're usually more vertical in nature, as opposed to apartments, which make it harder outside of putting like an elevator in, which then would definitely put them into considered to be a luxury category, and usually bigger units, similar to what like Bellevue is doing, which are much bigger, much more luxurious.
Yeah, the site is very narrow and it's a smaller type of development. So typically you have living rooms, living areas at ground floor, and then you go upstairs for like bedrooms. So it is inherently not an accessible type of unit. And then also being accessed through a couple steps to have a nice frontage around Kipling and have all the street, all the units with a street access. So it makes it challenging and not really units for those looking for accessible units.
That said, there are ways to make stairs accessible by having a ramp, or to make a 2 or 3 story accessible to have an elevator. Obviously, the costs go up. So just as Julie said, considerations. Owen? Still questions to be answered. I thought we'd answered this, sorry. Does every unit have a 5x5 backyard?
No, because it was very difficult to you have to think about the site is very specific in terms of width. Is a narrow site, and it fronts 3 streets, and we've been asked to have facades on all streets. So as you can see, for instance, if you highlight on the left there, those 2 units are facing Fairfield. Also, there was some comments about having interesting setbacks from the Fairfield. So by pushing the setbacks on one end and then having basically the units, but on the other units, so you end up with some of the units like this one, number 8 is probably too small for you to read the 8, but this one here do not have a yard.
And what would they have?
But they
is
have a
the
front yard,
front
and they have a
patio.
patio, and they have a front yard. So some have backyard, some have front yard. This one being on Fairfield, a bit more busy, so we have a little bit of a wall, like a pony wall, to help create a more interesting space. Same thing with Unit 1 on Kipling. It's more of a front yard.
So there are outdoor spaces for each unit. There are some in the front.
There are outdoor spaces for each unit. But to answer the question, not all units have a 5x5 backyard.
And how does sorry, I'm not sure if this was asked before, how does the Kipling setback measure compared to the last proposal?
Do you have it by art? I think it's similar.
I know that we have greater variation now. It was more of a solid wall before. It might appear to be slightly less because I think it's measured to the front post on here.
Which you're allowed to do in having porches encroaching setbacks. So I think overall the facade has been articulated way more, and the overall is actually the project is pushed back further.
I believe that I have to look at the numbers, but I think they've all been pushed back. All the setback. I mean, the setback on Kipling has been pushed back, as well as the setback on Thurlow and Fairfield to the actual building itself. Some other features have been added, such as, you know, the porch or a post that give it more articulation and more consistent with the form and character, which then change the numbers in terms of how they're measured, which is some of that site-specific measurement. One of the reasons for the site-specific zoning.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no further questions, I'm not seeing any hands raised. All of the comments that are in the chat box that are comments will get added to the report. We have been also listening to and writing down the questions that have been verbally asked. And I think the questions that are coming in here are just, they're not really questions any different than we've already had. So if you don't have any new questions, I would like to again encourage the community to stay on top of this development through the development tracker. If you have further comments, you can let the mayor and council know. If you have questions that you don't feel got answered, from the applicant today. You can contact the applicant and they will walk you through any of the questions that you do have. I think the whole pricing thing, is a whole discussion happening right now about pricing. And I think I do sympathize with any applicant trying to come out with a price for something that may take 2 years before they even break ground. I'm pretty sure the Roto, when it was first selling, they were like 790,000 or something, and now they're whatever they are. I mean, we've gone through a crazy time with COVID and with lumber prices and just in general, the crazy price of housing on the West Coast as it is. So I think the questions about how, speculation on what they are going to sell for is a really tough, that's a tough question to answer confidently for an applicant, and to even compare what is around in terms of the prices. So that's a tough area to go into. So I'm going to close the meeting because I think we're just going in circles, and I know there's a lot of emotion here. So please stay on top of it. Thank you, Sebastian and Bart, for the presentation. And the next meeting of the Community Association Land Use Committee will be December 13th. We do already have a couple of other applications that we're looking at, and we do encourage you to watch the website and Facebook page and Nextdoor to get the information so that you can participate in further conversations about what's happening in Fairfield Gonzales. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody and wish you a good evening. If the CALUC members can stay on the call, I'd ask everybody else to leave the meeting if they can. Yeah, thank you.